I'm taking some liberties in connecting the readings for the day and what I talk about it in the sermon, because I want to talk about and cover certain things that I find interesting before my retirement, which comes in 6 weeks. And it would kind of be a stretch, although it's a stretch I've made before, to try to make everything relevant to the readings. Although I think in both theology and physics, everything is relevant to everything else. But I remember we had a retired priest at Trinity in Iowa City who would give fairly long sermons. And one time after he had preached, my mother mentioned that he was about 85, I think, at that time. My mother mentioned that probably since Canon Hawtrey didn't know if he'd be alive the next week, he tried to cover everything. I'll try not to do that. It's been hard lately for me to not think about retirement. You kind of say, okay, well, I'll do that. I'm going to do that in a month and a half. I don't have to worry about it, but it does creep in. I think about the changes it will bring in my life. I've told a number of people that I've been on call for 45 years. And there's always been a kind of hyper alertness when a phone rings or when I think about an appointment coming up, and it's going to be different. And change will take time, I think, and be challenging as well as liberating. And the congregation as well, I think, will be dealing with various things in this transition. I've been here 20 years and habits develop. I hope it won't feel too liberating for the congregation when I go, but it might. There are 3 areas of focus that any church has to pay attention to. And one involves spirituality and what could be called soul work. The second one involves community and mutual support, having fun together, caring for each other. And the third one involves ministry in the community, work out in the world, acting out in the gospel, the commands that Jesus gave. Spirituality in all its aspects, the connecting with and exploring of the realm of soul, if you want to put it that way, is what makes us church. We're not just a social club. We're not just a nonprofit service organization. And the distinction for a church has to do with our exploration and commitment and learning about this part of life that is so neglected in the modern world, but so necessary. It's really what moved me to become an ordained minister. It seemed to me that, as I had an increasing interest in religions and philosophy and that sort of thing, psychology, that the church was really the only place that I could explore all that and still earn a living. There were other reasons, of course, but that was a big one. It could have been, maybe a counselor, but that's all involved with diagnosis and insurance. I could have been a university professor, but all the psychology departments in America were just doing experiments with lab rats. So I ended up in seminary. And I admit that there have been times when that focus on soul has led to the neglect of community and the more social aspects of church life, congregational life, and also not paying as much attention as I might to the service to the world. But it's really been fascinating. It's been fascinating. I think in my lifetime, and probably a little at least before that, the theology, level of theology of most Christians was sort of stopped when they finished going to Sunday school. It was basic. It was simple. Baby Jesus in the manger, grown-up Jesus teaching. There was the Last Supper and the cross and the death and the empty tomb. But that was about it. That's not true for this parish, I don't think. For me, at least, it's really so fascinating because you can take any one of those Sunday school topics and delve into it in depth, and it's almost an infinite amount of fascinating speculation and thinking and meditation that comes out of it. It opens up a deep understanding, I think, to what reality is, even though it's not talked about in our culture very much. It's how we're all connected. It's about the future, about the past. It's also an area, and the Episcopal Church recognizes this, that may be expressed most deeply without words. In our worship, in our sacraments, in our movement, in our body. The sacraments are the rites that have evolved over thousands of years to put us in that liminal space where God is interacting with human beings, and it's almost a different kind of consciousness that is not the transactional, objective, rationalistic kind of consciousness that the modern world is expert at. So we have to try, and I think we have the will to try, we have the environment to try in, and we have the heart, at least in this congregation, to see what comes from that. I've told, I think a couple of times, maybe in sermons, about the four ashramas, the four stages of life as they're presented in the Indian tradition. First, people are students in the first quarter of their life. In the second quarter, they become householders with other responsibilities and benefits. The third is called the forest dweller, where people return to the deeper spiritual meanings. Most folks, I think, at St. James are probably in the forest. The fourth is called sannyasi, where not often, it doesn't happen often, but where people might even have a funeral for themselves and then just walk out. I grew up very much as a student. My father was a professor, and there was always libraries around, and through high school and college, and then I went right on to seminary. I was ordained when I was 26, and I got married the same year. So I was then a householder more than a student, and I worked as a priest. I began a career that had a niche in society. I worked at 3 different churches in Iowa and El Camino Real. I helped bring up 2 children. I bought a house. I paid taxes. All the things that a householder is supposed to do during that second quarter of their life. And I did that over 26 years as well. And then about when I was 52, my life had changed a lot. I was off whatever had been a career path. And I came to St. James. And coming to St. James was like entering the forest. There was something about this place, something about the people that was calling to that different dimension, that forest dweller, spiritual seeker kind of dimension. I saw it in the congregation. I saw it in the groups that meet here. It was very special. And I was able to deepen that search when I went to my graduate program down near Santa Barbara. And I could not have done that without the support and forbearance of the congregation here. And I thank St. James very much for that. I haven't gone 26 years. They won't let me do that. Tried, but. So in retiring this year, I have 6 more years to walk around the forest and dwell on that stage and see what happens. I'll be in Pacific Grove, which is fairly forested. I don't know if I'll ever get to the sannyasi phase while I'm alive. My dad died when he was 78. But if I do and you see me wandering around, give me some rice or something. That's what's usually done. I suppose you can finish your sannyasi stage when you're dead, but I'm not sure if that fits with my idea of what happens. But this format, this 4-stage thing, 4-quarter thing, has been helpful for me as a way to look at it all, to see the transitions and how things fit. And I couldn't have done it in any other place. I couldn't have done it with a congregation that's just playing church and doing all the things you're supposed to do and wearing the right clothes and saying the right words. And I hope that continues. I hope that focus on the spiritual will continue here. It's a place unlike any other place, I think, in the diocese, combining the work of McGowan House and the congregation and all of it as a spiritual center. But this church is also a community. And I've seen community here blossom, especially during this pandemic. I mean, there's been that social level, that interactive mutual support level throughout the history, I think, of this place, especially in the 70s and into the 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, before Fort Ord closed down. And in a lot of ways, people had a strong community. And that necessarily changes as numbers get lower, and it has for the church all around the country and the world, I think. But interestingly, as we move to this transition, that sense of community, to me, seems like it's increasing. The vestry is doing a great job at this. They're meeting with the bishop to understand the process. They're connecting in social and pastoral ways as much as you can online with everybody in the parish, and writing notes, showing concern. We're not all the same here at this congregation. We might not be around each other much if it weren't for the church. We don't all live close to the church, but there's something about this family at St. James, something about the community that accepts people, even if they're kind of strange and quirky, that is open to and loving with people as they really are, and that is felt, and that's so necessary. There's no need to conform to some prefab Episcopalian model or anything. The care and love is right there. And that's not really because of me, because I haven't been very good at that part of church life. The pancake breakfasts and the spaghetti suppers and soup suppers and the Advent dinners and the coffee hours. And fundraising stuff, the barbecue, really is not because of me, because I'm not a very good Christian cruise director. But people step up, and that's going to continue. And I think it's great. It's part of who we are. And there are people in this place who are good at that, good at organizing, good at bringing people together. As far as ministry in the world, the third area is concerned, St. James probably needs to do some more work. We always kind of fall back on the fact that we have so many groups that we host, but we don't interact much. So while it's powerful as a ministry, it's also pretty passive. And there's more to being the church in the world than just offering a place for people to have refuge from the world. And the gospel says that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. He's saying that to us as his adopted children, as the continuing body of Christ for the world. But that involves more than inviting people in. It involves going out and talking with people, having conversations, not necessarily about church or God or anything like that, but just being present. When you're present to someone like that, with someone who might never come to church, you're listening, you're caring, you become Christ meeting that person, because it's the only way that they'll find that. And whether they acknowledge that intellectually or creedally or not, that's what ministry is about. It's what Jesus did. And St. James can join with other churches, Episcopal churches, Lutheran churches, whatever, to carry out corporate ministry in the world as well, to help in community organizations, to pay attention in a way that the secular world can't. There are many possibilities, not only to be the body of Christ in word, but the body of Christ in deed. And you all are going to be in charge of that. There's these kind of analyses that look at different sizes of churches, and one's a corporate church, and one's a program church, and one's a pastoral church, and one's a family church. And because of the income of the groups, we've been able to be a pastoral focused church without really having the numbers that justify that. And whoever comes here as pastor, I don't think can be the center of it all. It takes the circumference. Even if the priest is at the center in a way as an organizing force, the real activity, the real ministry in all these areas involves the circumference, because that's what hits the road. That's what makes things run and move. So got 6 weeks. My last service here will be the third Sunday of Easter. We'll probably do one in the morning, regular one, and then something in the afternoon as a wind up. It'll be my birthday as well. So I have a few more sermons to adjust so they don't sound like they've all been given before. But I'm so privileged and blessed, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for this time in the forest. You are very near to me, and you are very near to the kingdom of heaven. Thanks be to God.